Welcome to your first video lesson. Today we're looking at lesson 1-1 in our pre-algebra unit, the order of operations and evaluating expressions. Today's learning target is I can simplify an expression by applying the order of operations. You've actually learned about the order of operations in middle school. It's not a big part of our class. For the most part, we're going to be using a calculator. Today we're going to be solving them by hand, but again, on a test quiz, you can use a calculator. You don't need to show the order of operations. The way the order of operations works is we look at things in math via a priority. So like the things that are important we do first. So in this case, we do our parentheses, then we look at our exponents, then we multiply and divide, and then we add and subtract. The bottom two layers I actually call the see first, do first layer. So if you see multiplication before division or division before multiplication, you do those first. And the exact same thing with subtraction and addition. So the phrase that you often heard in middle school, I know you heard this regularly, is Pemdas. So let's write that in on our note sheet in case you missed today's lesson, which simply means please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, or parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, and then addition and subtraction. Now again, these are your see first, do first layers. So please, if you see division first, do it before your multiplication. If you see subtraction first, do it before your addition. So we're going to do this problem right here together. Simplify 3 minus 2 squared minus 6 times 4 divided by 2. So the first thing I do when I do these problems, when I want to show my work, is I always write out Pemdas. And I write it like this every single time. So if I look in this example, we need to go through this procedure. We need to ask ourselves, do we have parentheses? And if I look, I do have parentheses. And in that parentheses, I have a 3 minus 2. So I have to ask myself, what is 3 minus 2? It is 1. So I'm doing 1 squared minus 6 times 4 divided by 2. So I finished my parentheses. Now I have to ask myself, do I have any exponents? And I do. I have 1 squared. If I type that into my calculator, I get something. I get 1 squared. Ooh, I have to clear it. 1 squared, and that's 1. That's basically just saying 1 times 1 is 1. So I'm going to get 1 minus 6 times 4 divided by 2. And I have no more exponents. Now, I need to ask myself, remember, the see first, do first. I have to ask myself if I have multiplication or division. And if I look, I have multiplication and division. But the multiplication comes first because it appears first. So I'm going to ask myself what 6 times 4 is. Well, 6 times 4 is 24. So I have 1 minus 24 divided by 2. Now, I don't have multiplication anymore, but I do have division. So I'm going to do 24 divided by 2. When I do 24 divided by 2, that's 12. So I now have 1 minus 12. I have no addition, so I'm just going to do my subtraction. 1 minus 12 is equal to negative 11. And that is my final answer. Now, on a quiz or a test, we would let you just type this in a calculator and give us your answer. So if I were to type this in my calculator, I do 3 minus 2, I caret my square. Now I do minus 6 times 4 divided by 2. And when I type that, it gives me my negative 11, which is exactly what I got when I did this by hand. Now we're going to do Pemdas on this example. It says use order of operations to simplify each of the following. Use a calculator to check your answer. So we rewrite our Pemdas, so P-E-M-D-A-S. And again, I like to draw an arrow here. That way I know this is the see first, do first layers. So I have to ask myself if I have parentheses, because that's the first layer. And if you look, I do have parentheses. And in that parentheses, I have a negative 1 plus 5. So I have to ask myself what negative 1 plus 5 is. And negative 1 plus 5 is 4. So I'm really doing 12 divided by 3 times 2 plus positive 4, and then I square it. Boom. Now I have to ask myself if I have any exponents, and I do. I have an exponent right here. I have to ask myself what 4 squared is. 4 squared is just 4 times 4, or 16. So I have 12 divided by 3 times 2 plus 16. I now no longer have any exponents. Now I'm at the multiplication and division stage, but remember, multiplication and division, it's whatever I see first. So I'm doing 12 divided by 3 times 2 plus 16. The division comes before my multiplication, so I will do my division first. So I'm going to do 12 divided by 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. So I'm now going to do 4 times 2 plus 16. Now I have to ask myself, do I have multiplication? And I do. 4 times 2 is 8. And now I do my 8 plus 16. 8 plus 16 is 24. And that is your final answer. We're going to type that on our calculator just to see what we get. 12 divided by 3 times 2 plus -1 plus 5 squared. And I get 24. If you're feeling comfortable with this, you can try to do some by yourself, but if you're a little stuck, just pay a little attention. I do my Pemdas. So I have to ask myself for 8 minus 4 times 2, 3 minus times 3 minus 6 plus 1. I have to ask myself, do I have parentheses? And I do. I've got parentheses right here. So I have to ask myself what 3 minus 6 is. 3 minus 6 is -3. So I have 8 minus 4 times, not sure what happened. 1 second. 8 minus 4 times 2. 3 minus 6 is -3. And then I add 1. So now I have to ask myself if I have any exponents. And if you look, I don't have any exponents. So I can simply just go through the motions. So I have no more parentheses. I have no more exponents. Ooh, but if you look, I have the 2 and my parenthesis -3 that I forgot to look at. 2 parenthesis -3 simply just means I'm doing 2 times -3. 2 times -3 is -6. So I'm doing 8 minus 4 times -6 plus 1. Now I have to ask myself if I have any multiplication and division, and I do have multiplication. I have my -4 times -6. -4 times -6 is a positive 24. So I'm going to be doing 8 plus 24 plus 1. And if you look, this is just all addition, so I can just combine those. 8 plus 24 is 32. So I have 32 plus 1, and 32 plus 1 is 33. And that's your final answer. Now we have 5 minus 5 times 5 minus a -5 divided by 5. Lots of fun right here. So I have Pemdas. I have to ask myself if I have parentheses, and I do. I've got parentheses. Indeed, I do. I'm going to do both parentheses in one step. So 5 times 5 is 25, so I have 5 minus 25 minus a -5. 2 negatives make a positive, so this is plus 5 divided by 5. Now, I have no exponents. Do I have a multiplication or division? And I have a division, so I'm going to be doing 5 divided by 5. So I have 5 minus 25. 5 divided by 5 is 1. So I have no more multiplication or division, but I do have an addition and subtraction. But remember, if I look, my subtraction comes first, so I'm actually going to do my subtraction first. So 5 minus 25 is -20, and now I do my plus 1. When I do -20 plus 1, I get -19, and that's my final answer. If you want, you can just type in your calculator. And I get -19. Now, number 4 is a little different because we have a fraction. It's 75 plus 9 squared over 2 squared. So I do my Pemdas again. If you look, we have no parentheses. We do have exponents. We're going to do those exponents at the same time. So I have 75 plus 9 squared is 9 times 9, or 81. 2 squared is simply 2 times 2, which is 4. No more exponents. Now, we're going to just basically look at it layer versus layer. If you look, you have an addition up here. I only have addition up here, so I'm not even going to bother about multiplication and division. I'm going to do 75 plus 81, which is 156, all over 4. 156 divided by 4 is 39. And that's my final answer. Now, what we're going to be doing right now is we're going to be going over how to plug into an expression. An expression is a phrase in which at least one operation needs to be performed. When we do this, we simply play the air freshener game, where we just plug it in, like when you plug an air freshener into your wall when your room smells. All you're doing is substituting the number for the letter. Now here it says, always hug your negative number. So whenever you're evaluating an expression and plugging in a negative, you must wrap that number in parentheses. But here's a word to the wise. Whenever you plug in a number for a variable, please just wrap that number in parentheses. So every time you make a substitution, you need to wrap it in parentheses to make sure that number's safe, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna evaluate each of these expressions down here with these values. We are saying A is -8, B is 6, D is -3, X is 4, Y is 5, and Z is -1. It's not always going to be like that. It could be A is 4 one day, but for today, it's just A is -8. So in our first example, we have A squared times D. If you look, we're saying A is -8 and D is -3. So everywhere we see an A, make sure you just substitute that -8. But remember, we said you need to use parentheses. So I'm substituting in for A, I'm squaring it, and then I'm substituting in for D. If you look up here, we're saying A is -8, so we're going to put it in for A right here. And now we have to ask ourselves what D is. D is -3, so we're going to substitute -3 for D. We simply type this into our calculator. You are not doing anything else. You are simply just typing this into your calculator. One second. So we are going to do -8 squared times 3. And we get 192. Ooh, it's supposed to be -3. -192. And that's your final answer. All you are doing is showing us your substitutions, typing in calculate 8-4, and that's your final answer. Number 2, I have B squared minus D squared. So I'm making 2 substitutions. I'm substituting for B, squaring it, subtracting my D value, and squaring it. So I have to ask myself what B is. B is 6. So I'm going to substitute 6 for B, and then I'm going to ask myself what D is, and D is -3. So I'm substituting a -3. I type this in my calculator exactly as it's written. I hit enter, and I get 27. That is your final answer. Number 3 is a little long. I'm just going to copy and paste this real quick. That way we have it down here. It says y squared minus 4y plus b minus a. So we're making a substitution for y, a substitution for y, a substitution for b, and a substitution for a. So we have y squared minus 4 times y plus parenthesis b minus parenthesis a. So we have to ask ourselves what y is. If we look, y is 5. So I can make that substitution for y squared minus 4 times y. Now I have to ask myself what my b value is. In this case, my b value is 6. And my a value is -8. We are going to type that exactly as it's written. So 5 squared minus 4 times 5 plus parenthesis 6 minus a negative 8. And now we hit enter and we get 19. 19 is your final answer. Number 4. We want to do a plus b squared minus d squared. So we're making a substitution for a substitution for b and squaring it, and a substitution for d and squaring it. So we need to ask ourselves what a is. If we look, a is negative 8. We now need to ask ourselves what b is. B is 6. Now we need to ask ourselves what d is. D is negative 3. We're simply just going to type this into our calculator. Plus parentheses 6 squared minus negative 3 squared, and I'm going to hit enter, and I get 19 again. I think we got 19 before as well. And that's your final answer. So now your classwork is going to be practice with evaluating expressions and some order of operations. For your order of operations, you can just use your calculator, okay? If you have any questions, email myself or Ms. Townsend. Have a great day.